Hello, this is Aileen Ionescu-Summers. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. And you may have just heard, we had intended, and we are still intending, to have a policymaker representative from the government of Colombia speaking with us today, who has been unfortunately delayed, hopefully only for a few minutes. But what we would like to do is start, nevertheless, the discussion, and as soon as our government representative can join, we can also include him in the discussion. So if we can just put up the slide first, thank you very much. And I would like to introduce everyone who is here, because we have a really interesting mixture of global representatives today. On the one hand, we have Leon Parra, who hails from Colombia, and he is the representative of our GEM Colombia team. And secondly, we have Anna Tarnawa, who represents Poland. She heads up our GEM Poland team. And thirdly, we have Nihel Chabrak, who is representing United Arab Emirates. And you'll see that up there we have, well, a set of very experienced academics in the area of entrepreneurship. We hope to be joined later by Daniel Oviedo, who is the Chief Statistician of Colombia. But I think as we start this conversation, we'll have a great input from very experienced people, certainly with GEM and also in entrepreneurship in their countries, to contribute to the discussion. Now, what I'd like to do first is just introduce you to GEM very, very briefly, because some of you actually will not know what GEM is. GEM represents 21 years of robust research in entrepreneurship. We, as you may have guessed, we are a consortium of national country teams, and we associate with top academic institutions such as those that are represented here on the panel, and our financing partners that are mostly governments. What does GEM do? We carry out solely survey-based research on entrepreneurship worldwide. GEM is the only global research source that collects data on entrepreneurship directly from individual entrepreneurs, and that does mean that we have, well, I suppose, very differentiated data as opposed to other sources. We carry out an adult population survey and a national expert survey, and we are able to create data sets that are unique and benefit numerous stakeholders worldwide. GEM actually began in '99 as a joint project between Babson College and London Business School. So we have 21 years of data, and that actually represents, in figures, it really is rather amazing, over 3 million adults in 114 economies across the globe. This actually means that we do 150,000 plus interviews a year. So 50 economies participate in our research in 2019. And as I said, we work with hundreds of specialists in entrepreneurship research and multiple academic and research institutions. Okay, so that's by way of housekeeping, so that you're very clear on what kind of data we're talking about today. I really want to introduce the subject of stats first, statistics, and how important are statistics related when you want to contribute to decision making in public policy and development of new programs to strengthen business. Leon, would you be able to give us a perspective from Colombia first, and then we'll benchmark a little bit with Anna and Nihel.
Yeah, I think that we can analyze the relevance of statistics as well as the research in entrepreneurship for public policy from two perspectives. I think that we have to take in mind these two perspectives. By one side, from the perspective of researchers, we could say that the statistics and entrepreneurship metrics must provide relevant data to characterize entrepreneurship and to be able to disaggregate its behavior at the micro and macro levels. We also believe that the statistics should support the formulation of public policy, as well as the implementation of entrepreneurship in promotion programs. So I think, and however, from the other side, the policymakers are more interested in having real-world information, real-time information, which allow them to analyze the phenomenon of entrepreneurship from a conjunctural perspective, as well as its possible evolution over time. I believe in this sense that the statistic in this case will be more useful in support the short-term decision-making process for policymaker, allowing him to validate and argue decisions that he makes the public sphere and the promotion programs that he has considered on his agenda. We have to take in mind that the decision maker is affected by variables such as voting paradox, the electoral cycle, as well as the coercion of different stakeholders in his decision-making process. And I think that this implies that the main contribution of both research and entrepreneurship statistics, including the GEM project itself, should mediate between the providing real-time data for decision makers, as well as forecast trends and the performance of entrepreneurship indicators in the long term. We have to mediate between the short term for the practical decision for the policymaker and the long term with the studies as well as the researchers that could be useful for the whole of population.
Well, thank you very much for that intervention. I'll actually, Anna, turning to you, you actually have just finished an electoral cycle, I believe. I mean,
oh, yes.
literally just off the press. So how would you react to what Leon just says? And I noticed that Daniel has just joined us. So pleasure to have you on board, Daniel. For the moment you're muted, but at the next intervention you can join us. Anna, your reaction to what Leon has just said.
What I can say, I just have to confirm what Leon has said. And I have to say that both statistical data as well as social surveys, all different surveys that are based on representative samples are really important for the policy making process. I cannot imagine, making policy or any sort of strategy for entrepreneurship without actual data. And the usual problem with this official data from the statistical offices is that they are a little bit old, I would say, like 2-year-old or even older. If you want to compare, for example, the data for the whole Europe, for example. So in that case, there are other sources like our GEM, which provides every year new fresh data on certain sort of areas, and these data can be combined and they can be used for any sort of policy. Actually, our actual national, strategy that drives and plans what our government is going to do in our country is from 2015. And it is still the actual strategy, and it is based on all different sources of data, and GEM is one of them. So so I was really glad when I saw that our GEM is also the part of data sources that is being used for the policy. And I think that policymakers nowadays, more and more often than they used to do 10 years ago or 15 years ago, they are simply used to searching for data and then so sort of thinking about future programs basing on data. Yeah, that's
okay. Well, thank you very much, Danielle. I think Chris, you can unmute Danielle. And I'm not sure if you can put your video on, Danielle. It's not absolute. Well, he's
No,
actually.
I think that we lost Daniel.
We lost Danielle. Okay. All right. Then I turn to you, Nihel, to actually maybe give another perspective again on United Arab Emirates. Perhaps pulling on one or two examples, you know, if you can, on how statistics has contributed to decision making and public policy in your country.
Yeah, absolutely, Eileen. I think actually in the very context of the UAE, a country which is trying to move from, you know, oil economy to a knowledge-based economy. I mean, it's obvious that senior leaders and policymakers are, first of all, very favorable and would like actually to promote and develop entrepreneurship in the country. So it is considered as an extremely important mechanism to diversify economy. And another factor in this country is that according, for example, to the Ministry of Economy, the SME sector represents about 94% of the total number of companies operating in the UAE, and it provides about 86% of the private sector's workforce. And if we take the case of Dubai, so SMEs contribute around 40% of the Emirate GDP. So for the government, it is very important actually to have this data culture and to have a dashboard, to have the relevant indicators in order to support building an entrepreneurial ecosystem and activity in the country. And the other thing also, which is very important in this specific context of COVID-19, so recently actually the Prime Minister in the country made that statement. He said, anyone who thinks that the world after COVID-19 will be the same as the one before, it is mistaken. And this means that there are a lot of businesses who are going to be replaced by other new businesses. And so this concept of creative destruction is in motion. So it's very important actually for a government to know actually which businesses need support and in which sector actually they need to, you know, to put or to target or to, you know, put all the economic stimulus packages, mainly now actually the government in the billions of dirhams actually as federal and local governments in order to support these businesses. But this should be informed, of course, by where this money should be put and which are the sectors that are going to flourish actually in the after COVID-19 era. So again, the UAE government is very driven by data, and the plan, actually the national agenda, is supported by a series of benchmarks which are all related to indicators, and one of them is you know, the indicators provided by GEM.
Which is really great news for us, right? Well, I don't know, Chris, whether you can check up on whether we can still get Danielle. It may be tricky there.
No.
But in the meantime, could I ask you, perhaps Anna, to start off this time on the advantages that Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has over other sources of information that are out there on entrepreneurship on a global level. Anna, you've been working how many years with GEM?
We started in 2011, so yes. It will be 10 years soon.
10 years soon, so 10-year anniversary, 10 years of perspective on whether GEM represents something different. So, your point of view, please.
What can I say? GEM since the beginning, because as you know, we are the public agency that supports entrepreneurship in our country via different sort of grants, training, information and online courses, everything, and also different sort of activities where they can meet and start cooperation. But research has been for years sort of main element, key element of my agency, and I think that in everything what we do, in every strategy, in every sort of thinking about the future, in every input we give to any sort of government strategy or opinion, we always check data, and we look for arguments that would support our ideas. It's not like we, of course, we are experts to some extent, but we are always looking for the data that would prove our ideas. And when we joined GEM, it was like entering like another world with another like variety of data. And it's not about entrepreneurs in the meaning that you can find at Eurostat or in Central Statistical Office, where entrepreneurship is measured by the companies who have actually established their business, and those who are sort of providing every half a year or every year a sort of report on their outcomes, and they answer the questions from the statistical office. It's not like that in GEM, and I think it's the advantage of GEM. We are first, we have two surveys. One of them is the adult survey, and we are asking questions about entrepreneurship to adults. And another one is, of course, another sort of key element of GEM is that we have this expert assessment of the ecosystem in which entrepreneurs start and grow. And if I have to compare what GEM gives and what is different to the data you can find at the statistical office, is that GEM provides complementary information on how society perceives entrepreneurship, whether society is a sort of a good breeding bed for entrepreneurship or not.
Yeah, like a petri dish.
Yeah, and I can I can say that at least from our perspective of being the country for long time under communism time, where entrepreneur was really connected to someone who is cheating and not a successful.
It was a bad word. Yes.
Bad word. And nowadays, especially recent data from 2016, 17, and the last one, they show that our society is really sort of admiring entrepreneurship, and those who really succeeded in business can sort of count on social recognition, and that's completely that's something that you cannot easily get from other sources. And also as there are many other sort of areas in GEM. For example, whether people are afraid of starting business because they are afraid of going bankrupt. That problem is a serious problem in Europe, I would say, especially in those Eastern Europe, where going bankrupt was always related to sort of life sort of problem.
A reality,
and whether it is changing or not, you can get it from GEM. Also, data on women and men, like every year you get the same data on women and men, and you can compare them, and you can see how women are becoming more and more entrepreneurial, and this is also the case of our country. And there are many more. I could speak for half an hour.
Okay.
I have to. Yeah, I will let the others say something.
Okay. Let's just see if there's just an additional perspective which might be more country linked from either Nihel or yes.
But the last sentence.
No problem.
Really great with GEM that whenever we have a delegation from a foreign country where GEM is present, and I can I can simply take the same data or on similar sort of indicators, and I can compare entrepreneurship, and that's really an asset, I would say. That's something, and the data are fresh. It's like, now we have data from 2019, and we are in the process of collecting like new data. So in a few months, we will have new data for 50-something economies, and that's I think really something.
Yeah, as you know, people out there listening can see, researchers, you know, and this is something when I joined as executive director, I really noticed. People get passionate about GEM, and that is because the research is exciting. But Nihel, would you like to add to anything, a perspective to what Anna has already said? And then we'll ask you, Leon.
Yeah, I think actually what is interesting with GEM is, like, I mean, the conceptual framework we are using is very informative for, you know, for policymakers. Let me explain it a little bit. In the context of the UAE, okay, we all know that we have a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem. So for example, if I just look at 2019, so the country ranked first in the world for the support and relevance of government policies, second for entrepreneurship education at the school age, third for entrepreneurial culture and social norms, and fourth for taxes and bureaucracy. So that's perfect. But for a policymaker, what they are looking for is what other aspects I need to look at and I need to address in order to promote entrepreneurial activity in the country. And this information is also provided by GEM. So for example, the framework, it shows how societal values affect individual disposition to start, you know, an entrepreneurial undertaking. And this means that, you know, it's very important to look how actually entrepreneurship as a phenomenon is regarded in an economy, and this is going to affect the entrepreneurial ambitions of people, whether they are going to pursue or not an entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial undertaking. And the other thing also is that besides the, you know, the societal values, we have also the individual perceptions. And so factors or aspects such as the knowledge about other entrepreneurs, or do you, self-efficacy, do you have like the knowledge and skills to start up a business? Anna talked about the fear of failure, but also, are you able to perceive opportunities? Do you consider starting a business easy? So all these things also affect the decision of individuals to start or not a business. The last factor, which is also very important, and for a country like the UAE, so we are in a region, so the MENA region, one of the problems is that we don't really have objective measures that allow cross-country comparison. And this actually, of course, is due to, you know, the huge variety in local economies. So what is interesting is that GEM gives us the possibility to do such comparison. But on the top of that, we are also able to, you know, to compare with aspirations. So countries which are considered as benchmarks for the UAE and aspire in terms of entrepreneurship. And of course, this is allowed with GEM. So GEM had a lot of information that are extremely important for policymakers to make, you know, improvement of entrepreneurship in the country.
Leon, can you just very briefly a perspective from Colombia? I'm sure a lot has been said so far, but maybe you have something fresh from Colombia to add.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Yes, I think that from the perspective of Colombia, I think that GEM has a lot of advantage in relation to another research projects and data sources of entrepreneurship. I think that our main strength is that we are the only project at global level that generates primary information about entrepreneurship as well as established business with representativeness at country level. This is the principal advantage that we can sell to policymakers when we can talking about the GEM with them. But on the other hand, I think that GEM has a competitive data for more than 50 countries and provide information at micro level about the entrepreneur's performance, but at the same time, provide information for policymakers about the perspective of experts regarding the entrepreneurial ecosystem through our index NACI. Finally, I think that GEM project has a dream team of researchers worldwide, not only for the case of Colombia, that we are a wonderful team, but also at global level, we have a dream team of researchers that collect and analyze the information related with entrepreneurship that could be useful for decision makers. Moreover, GEM has been the only project that I know globally to strive to innovate and explore new metrics and methodologies to measure and monitor the behavior of entrepreneurs, not only involving primary data for APS and NAE's survey, but also providing the use of other tools such as big data, as well as unstructured data analysis. For example, like the project that we made a couple of years ago in a pilot phase. I'm sure that we have a lot of challenges as project in the near future. More of them in the case for a case in Colombia, we have a big challenge, more of them related with the COVID situation, for example. But I think that the use of real-time data coming from social media and unstructured data could be a great contribution for a next line of researchers. But I'm sure as well that we are the only research team that has the skill to achieve all these challenges that the actual situation is built on the table. And all these challenge, we have to achieve this.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Leon. And it's a good moment now, I think, to welcome Daniel Oviedo, who's a top statistician with the government of Colombia and works very closely with your team, Leon. And I think you heard maybe the majority of what Leon responded in terms of what GEM actually brings to the party, if you like, in terms of valuable data and information for policy making. But now is our opportunity. It really is a great opportunity. Thank you for joining us to get your point of view on how important GEM has been for you. Maybe just talking a little bit about statistics in general, and then how GEM fits into that picture, and how do you unite, how do you actually bring GEM data into perspective in terms of other data sources? Just a general perspective like that. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. You need to
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm sorry for the delay in joining the webinar, but we are public servants, and we were in a meeting with the governor of one of the most affected departments in the pandemic situation, which is Sucre, in the Caribbean of the country, and it was impossible for me to leave the conversation at that moment. But I'm very happy, and I want to thank you for the invitation. And more specifically, I would like to thank Leon Darío Parra, that also was the promoter of the participation of the National Statistics Office in this important webinar. And I just wanted to highlight that the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has been essential as regards us approaching entrepreneurship in Colombia. As many of the assistants of this webinar know, and since 2006, we have continuous information from Colombia that has been reported and has been extracted from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. So this is an important database that could be very helpful in order to address which are the main challenges of entrepreneurship in our country. And there, I wanted to highlight that the possibility of having strategic partnerships between the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor and the official statistics production in Colombia could be very useful, because currently in our national development plan, we have three main of our development agenda, which are the institutional framework, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and the equality perspective of our socioeconomic development. And it was personally, in his own words, the president of Colombia, Iván Duque, that invited us to join these three concepts: entrepreneurship, institutional respect or rule of law, and equality in our society to be the main drivers in development agenda in Colombia. And why entrepreneurship is substantial when we want to address a development agenda in Colombia, because in Colombia, a very important share of entrepreneurship is linked to informality. And in Colombia, as a middle-income country, we have a particular feature that we have almost, let's say, 60% of the aggregate economic activity, both urban and rural, under the framework of informality. And that's why recently the OECD and ECLAC, the Conference of Economic Development for Latin America of the United Nations, decided or defined that Latin American countries will suffer from four main traps: the productivity trap, the institutional trap, the social vulnerability trap, and the environmental trap in our development agenda. And entrepreneurship is at the core of solving the productivity trap and the social vulnerability trap, because with a good quality entrepreneurship in our country, we could not only solve the vulnerability that many of the entrepreneurs are facing due to informality, but at the same time, we could allow this entrepreneurship to foster innovation, and this innovation is going to be quite helpful in order to increase the productivity levels in our country. That's why we believe that being part of this webinar and finding the possibility of setting some strategic partnerships between the official statistics production about entrepreneurship and the main resources that the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has developed in our country could be very useful in order to contribute to this agenda and in order to foster entrepreneurship that generates innovation and at the same time that generates prosperity in half of the, let's say, active population in our country. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much for that very interesting perspective. You know, we've had several webinars where we've been looking at COVID-19 impact on policy and policy making, and we've not actually heard from a policy maker yet, so it's great to have you here today. What I'd like to do now is actually move to the more specific. So according to your experience so far, Danielle, let's look ahead. You know, we know that these are extraordinary times. So what metrics and indicators will policymakers require in the future, do you think, in order to measure and understand, for example, the behavior of entrepreneurial ecosystems, or you know, when it comes to trying to characterize new ventures, new business within the country? what do you think is coming in terms of that expectation from policymakers?
Okay, thank you very much, because this is an interesting area that we are trying to approach, because as you may know, currently the international statistical community is fostering the movement of National Statistics Office just of being simple official statistics providers or official information providers, but to become data stewards. So to produce information that could illustrate or could illuminate which are the kind of sound public policies that our countries require in the current situation. And I believe that in the current situation, in the pandemic of COVID-19, one of the most vulnerable areas in our economic framework is the entrepreneurs. We believe that the linkage of our entrepreneurs with informality are making them a little bit invisible. So when we want to target public policy in order to facilitate financial constraints or to promote innovation or the accession to digital equipment in order to face in a better way the pandemic of COVID-19, this is something very difficult. And that's why the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor that provides an individual survey of entrepreneurs could be very useful in order to locate and in order to identify this population together with one of our main innovative or most innovative statistical operations, which is the household enterprise survey that we are developing together with the traditional household survey. So when we go and we arrive to a household and we identify that we are facing an entrepreneur that is the owner of a small company under 10 employees, we profile completely the conditions under which he is developing this economic activity. And this could be something very useful to interact with the information of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor.
Great. I'm actually quite intrigued with what you said at the beginning of what you just said, which was that you are moving into a more central space, let's say. Perhaps that is an indicator that data is becoming more central to decision making. Some say data is everything. It's certainly in the last few months, we've been hit with data every single day, right? As people are trying to get their heads around the COVID-19 phenomenon. Could I ask you, Nihel, do you agree that data is taking more of a central place in decision making, or has it always been the case, or are there shifts there as far as you're concerned in UAE?
Yeah, I think, Aileen, as I explained from the beginning, the government in the UAE, and mainly in the context of the national agenda and this, objective, to achieve certain goals. And one of the strategic goals is related to entrepreneurship. So the data culture is really very important in the UAE. But I think actually moving forward, and what I can see and how actually GEM could contribute to that is that the UAE is looking increasingly actually to develop hubs. Like, for example, when we look at how actually Sharjah and Abu Dhabi are, creating and developing an ecosystem besides, the Dubai, which is, when we say the UAE, everyone, thinks about Dubai. So actually, when I look at the GEM data, so I think one of the indices that was recently tested and now implemented is the Quality Composite Index. We were actually among the first countries to adopt and to study in the very context of Abu Dhabi, and we are going to continue studying the regional ecosystems so that actually we can provide this information to the policymakers. And the other thing, and I know that you have been also involved because the UAE government would like also to be more proactive and would like to develop more credible reference, index, which will allow, assessing, aspects related to entrepreneurship, such as the entrepreneurial talent, the impact entrepreneurship, and also into entrepreneurial governance. And when I talk about here, these aspects, they are extremely important for the UAE government because this will help the UAE steer towards, a quality entrepreneurial activity. So it's not only about having more entrepreneurial activity, it's mainly about having quality entrepreneurial activity, how to contribute to the well-being. And the country has a full agenda, centered around well-being, how to achieve the 2030 UN agenda and the SDGs. And this is also a priority for the UAE government. And I know that also GEM is moving, and with the partnership we have with the UN now, we are moving towards, helping policymakers achieving such endeavor, and helping them with this kind of information that will promote what we call this quality entrepreneurial activity. I think this is what I can say in overall, Eileen.
Thank you very much. I actually will turn to you next, Anna. Perhaps you can give a view also maybe from European Union on indicators and metrics that either are now being used by the policymaker to know the future of the evolution of entrepreneurship, or, indicators and metrics that may be required in the future that you suspect are coming around the corner. Yeah.
When I was listening to Juan and Nihel, I had this idea what sort of future we are thinking about. Are we thinking about the sort of next future, which is next year or two following years, or are we thinking about the future in terms of, I don't know, 10 or 20 years for GEM and for data that would be useful for the policymakers, but I would start with the ones that have been used, and I have to say that from the perspective of the European Commission, they have been preparing for years a sort of a scoreboard on innovation, and they started to use our opportunity variable a few years ago, and it's one of the 27 sort of elements that are assessed, and each country is assessed, its innovation level is assessed on the basis of certain elements, and one of them is the data from our GEM survey. So they sort of think, and we agree with that those people who start businesses and they are motivated by opportunity, by the need to change something in their environment and to gain more money, they would develop quicker, and they would bring more gains to the economy in comparison to those who are necessity driven ones.
Yeah.
So that's, for example, one of the examples from the European Union. We, as I said at the beginning, the strategy actually adopted in 2017 by our government on the responsible development of our country. has also been using data from our national expert survey, and this indicator is actually, it refers to the government policy and how it affects entrepreneurship. So I can see sort of examples how the policymakers use data in their, you know, like daily life, but it's sort of strategies that you can find and everyone can access. From my sort of daily life, I can at work, I can say that we very often sort of are asked for, or you know, anytime we because being the public agency, we are involved in the process of, you know, preparing any sort of strategy or plan for entrepreneurship, and we also design our own programs for entrepreneurs. We have an experimental sort of project called InnoLab, where we engage entrepreneurs in the process of designing new programs for them. But coming back, because we are running out of time, to your question about the sort of future metrics and indicators, I think that the COVID has affected certain sectors, but it hasn't affected like the whole economies. It has impact on economies via the fact that we had to undergo via lockdown, and the economies have been locked down, and some of them are still to some extent locked, and we are not sort of using all the activities that we have used before, and we are expecting a crisis everywhere. But and we can sort of, you know, and I think we could see, you know, the change, for example, in the level of those who have exited businesses within the last 12 months, and this is actually the sort of indicator we have within GEM. So soon we would know how many entrepreneurs actually, not entrepreneurs, people have exited their businesses. We have also, because I saw the question on the chat, we have also amended our questionnaires, both our questionnaires, and we have extra questions on COVID, and we would soon know how much COVID affected society, those who are involved in entrepreneurship. But also thinking about the future with big F, how I would call it, I can say that, you know, for many years, public policy in our country was sort of in line with the European Union perspective, which was driven by the name innovation and you know, knowledge-based economy, for example. But right. was one of them, and I think that nowadays, you know, additional sort of ideas may come, you know, but maybe as important as innovation, because COVID and this lockdown made entrepreneurs innovate, and they started to offer new sort of you know, goods, and they have changed and they have modified their business models. It's not like even those who were locked down, when they started to be active again, they have modified their sort of activity. But soon we would sort of need, as policymakers, data on, for example, you know, aging, for example, how it affects entrepreneurship, whether entrepreneurs sort of reply to the problem of aging, and not even aging, but the term, how it's called, when it's simply we are fewer and fewer in certain countries. You know, the number of, you know, people living in Poland is going down because we are getting older, and the rate of those who are dying is higher than those who are, you know, being born. Also, all these terms related to ICT, digitalization, artificial intelligence, also eco world or sustainability, how entrepreneurs would adjust to the new trends, how they would sort of reply to the needs of their customers. And we know from other surveys that, you know, entrepreneurs and those who are engaged in entrepreneurship, they innovate usually because of their clients that need, you know, some change. So these are, you know, and also always our survey on ecosystem and assessment of the conditions that are, you know, present in the national economies would be always very crucial. And with that, and in GEM, we always innovate, and we have changed, you know, our tools this year, and we are changing them like every few years, so that they would, you know, be more in line with the current trends, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a very complete answer to the question, and thank you so much. No, I honestly, I really appreciate that. We're going to move in a moment just to answer a few of the questions that are there with the participants. But I can't resist one question for Danielle, which is, do you see any as yet unleveraged potential for GEM? You know, potential that's there that perhaps we could actually, you know, leverage in a better way or in a different way. What do you see for GEM in the future as potential? Yeah. Oh, you're on.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on that. I think that there are many important challenges as far as the body of knowledge about the information that we have to produce in order to develop a good framework of entrepreneurship statistics. I think that one of the most important challenges that we are facing right now, and currently we have developed, taking into account the answer of Anna, we have been developing what we call the business pulse. And this is a perception survey that we develop for all the enterprises which are subject to the economic surveys. And we are asking to the owners of those enterprises, how are they changing their production lines and how are they adapting the normal way of working due to the pandemic of COVID-19. And there we have been observing that there is a lack of interest in the use and the deployment of technical or digital solutions in order to face the COVID-19 pandemic here in Colombia. Right. And that has been something very, very challenging in a webinar that we had with the World Bank, because currently technology is the road in order to easily face the main challenges of the COVID-19. And that's why the information regarding research and development, technology adoption, and how this technology or information and communications technology appropriation in the production process is going to be observed in order to see how this could develop new ways of entrepreneurship in our country is something very challenging. And I feel that something that the pandemic is placing at the top of the priorities is that we also have to survey perceptions. And this is something that the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has been doing in a very, very rigorous way in the last years. And that's why we see an opportunity to work together and to define, let's say, a strategic partnership, because perceptions are very important in the current situation in order to redefine a new entrepreneurship agenda in the post-COVID-19, let's say, agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. That is absolutely fascinating perspective. Very, very informative for us. I'm just wondering whether we could just answer one or two of these questions before we close off. We did actually have a query about whether we included COVID-19 questions. And you answered that, Anna. But Leon, I'd be interested in hearing from you in terms of, you know, virtual versus face-to-face collection of data. And what's been your experience and, you know, in this very extraordinary year?
Yeah, according with the Daniel said and with the Anna and Neil and the last conversation, I believe that one of the main challenges that GEM has, as well as the other projects related with data, is that we can cross structured indicators with unstructured information from the ecosystem. That means that we can cross, for example, what the people say in Twitter and Facebook with structured indicators from APS or NES.
Right.
And in this regard, I think that the policymakers could say very useful if we can combine the methodologies and metrics that forecast the performance of a venture, and we can provide a complete picture to the policymakers. By one side, we provide them to structured indicators with a single information, but on the other side, we can provide unstructured information in real time, what the people say in the social media. And in this regard, I think, and my conclusion for the talk, is that the data must tell practical histories and what's going on with the business creation in a country, as well as to give insights to policymakers in relation to the possible trends and projections of the entrepreneurship behavior. And this take into account all the possible dimensions and all the possible data sources, as for example, social media, as well as databases of World Bank indicators or OCDE or another data sources in the data ecosystem globally. And this take into account on all the possible dimensions for that affecting the evolution of this topic in each country in comparison with the same situation in other countries. I think that this is the main challenge. And according with that, and I said before, GEM did a pilot project related with big data and with the cross of information, the Twitter and Facebook, moving forward in this direction. And I think that we are attending the next challenge that the society and as well as the economy is put on the table in this moment.
Well, thank you very, very much for that, Leon. We actually have quite a number of questions. So what I suggest we will do with most of them is that we'll attempt to actually answer these in a separate form, attach that to the recording of the webinar. But Nihel, I actually do have a question very specifically for you. I will leave the last word to you, Nihel. Are specific policies being put in place to support women entrepreneurs in the UAE? And I know you have a specific interest in this and expertise, so I'm just going to allow you to finish off on probably a bright note. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ellie. Well, actually, I don't think there is a problem. I mean, I remember our, you know, our panel in Miami this year, and when I was talking about the situation of women entrepreneurship, and mainly in the context of the UAE, and I said that actually when we look at the situation and how it evolves and the progress we have compared to other countries, because it's also important to do that comparison. I think actually the women in the UAE are extremely, you know, they are doing well. Very good situation actually for women entrepreneurship. The only thing I was trying to highlight is that, and it's not specific to the UAE, so this comment is not specific to the UAE. It's like when we you know, it's very important, according to the GEM framework, to be exposed to role models. And, you know, this is one of the factors actually that contribute somehow to the disposition or to the individual disposition to start a business. And unfortunately, most of the role models, and when it comes actually to, you know, presenting entrepreneurs, well, actually when we present entrepreneurs, they are all males. So we don't really have much women actually entrepreneurs to present. And this actually kind of stereotype we need really to change, and we need really to you know, to move, and you know, to change
the mindset.
Exactly, because it's very important if we want really to, you know, to promote women entrepreneurship. I just have one comment actually about this specific here, because this question about, you know, the survey, the face-to-face or the virtual, I don't think that this is going to be the biggest challenge for us. I was talking to them, you know, to people in the government here in the UAE, and thinking about, should we do, you know, the survey this year? Because typically what is happening is that there is a general, you know, mood where actually people are extremely pessimistic. So how are we going to analyze the data? What is the part related, you know, to the ecosystem, you know, or to, you know, proper to the entrepreneurial environment, from the whole environment, from the whole situation where people are really suffering, people are really, you know, going through this isolation, lockdown. So it's challenging. I mean, when I look, for example, to the statistics and to the data for the UAE, and I look at when we were hit by the financial crisis in 2009, it took about 10 years actually to recover. And so this was really very clear through the data for the UAE. So how long is it going to take now, you know, after COVID-19? And how are we going really to understand the real impact of the policies and of the programs put in place by the government? Because typically it's continuing to improve. There are so many things happening in the UAE specifically to promote and to support entrepreneurship, because mainly now actually the government would like actually to focus on private sector employment and self-employment. So this is the biggest challenge, is really how to analyze the data, how to read the data, and how quick is going to be the recovery from this crisis.
So thank you very much, Nihel. I mean, I knew I could leave it to you to wrap up quite well. And we have run over our time a little, but I think it was worth it. I really have appreciated talking to you today. I think we could have extended this another hour, actually. But alas, we don't have that time. We still have something like 45 participants with us. To those 45 participants, if you want to start a national team in your country and there isn't a GEM team already in the country, please do contact us. In fact, we're looking more and more for partners for our national teams because the more national partners that can contribute to GEM, the more stable GEM is. We also have an ecosystem readiness tool for assessing the readiness of ecosystems for entrepreneurship. This is something you'll find more about on our website. And then we are always looking, and in particular, for sponsors for GEM, sponsors of special reports, such as social entrepreneurship, family business, etc., etc. In any case, whatever your interest in GEM might be, you have the contacts there. We've really enjoyed being with you today, and it's been an absolute pleasure to welcome you, Danielle, Leon, Anna, and Nihel. I think we could almost organize this part 2 of this in particular.
Oh yeah, why not?
Thank you very, very much indeed for your time today. Very appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.